That's going live. Let's see how things look over here. I go. We gotta remember there's like a 10-second delay. I'm always forgetting. Oh, there's that. Let me know if you can see it on. Oh, there it goes. Both are good. We are good on both. Let me turn that off. Turn this off. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nerd Podcast channel for the very first live stream for the channel. We're doing this on both my Instagram and on the YouTube channel. So we're going to see how this goes. Hopefully both things hold up relatively well. But guys, welcome in. I'm Shawnee D-Man, host of the Nerd Talk podcast channel. Been around for like at least 3 years up to this point, but we are here to just hang out, talk some Star Wars. But before we get into it, I'll allow my guest to introduce herself and we'll get it going from there.
Hi guys, welcome in. If you're not familiar with me, I am Angele, otherwise known on Nerdy Girl across multiple social platforms. I'm a small Star Wars and fandom content creator, and I'm just really excited to talk Star Wars and especially to talk about the newest Star Wars show, Skeleton Crew, that recently came out. I'm so hyped about that show, and I'm just really excited to get to yap about it to my heart's content today. It'd be awesome.
All right. So it finished up 3 weeks ago. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think.
Something like that. Yeah, I think it's been about 3 weeks, coming up on about 3 weeks that it wrapped up. So
I remember us. So back when we were talking, this was a couple of months ago, probably almost not a year ago, but like maybe close enough, where we were talking about Skeleton Crew. Actually, no, it was after the Acolyte. It was after the Acolyte. We were talking about how at least I gave my opinion that Acolyte, or not Acolyte, but the Star Wars Skeleton Crew could be a show where a lot more people are kind of like on the same, or kind of like united in liking the show. What were your thoughts overall about Skeleton Crew?
yeah. Well, I think you really were, first of all, right about that. I think I've seen almost, I won't say exclusively, but mostly positive feedback about Skeleton Crew. And then for myself, I genuinely loved this show so much, and I had really high expectations going into it because I had been really looking forward to this project for some time, and it got delayed several times because of the SAG-AFTRA strike and COVID, and just things like that development wise. And so I've been waiting for this show to come out for like 2 years, and it absolutely exceeded my expectations. I felt so much nostalgia with this show, but at the same time it was such an original story, and I feel like personally I find it to be one of the most well executed projects in live action in terms of the TV shows, if not the best one for me. And I also just think that it's something that, like, if there was a target audience for this, I am the target audience for this show. And so I don't know, it was an incredible experience, like getting to watch the show come out, and I truly loved it.
I like I remember because when we first got the trailer and everything, and everybody was talking about it, it pretty much got the same kind of like vibes that I was seeing from people, where it's kind of like, oh, this is like Goonies in space, a little bit of Stranger Things kind of vibes to it, and things like that. After watching the series, I was like, you know what? This is more like Treasure Planet / Treasure Island.
Yeah.
And so, and I was like, you know what? I love those. I'm all for it. So let's start with, where do I want to start with this? So this was about 8 episodes. Yeah. But in the past, I've complained about Star Wars in general when it comes to their run times and the episodes. Skeleton Crew, I was for the most part okay with how the run times were set up. Again, this show was basically a show for kids for the most part. Even there was stuff in it that adults could enjoy, but I thought the run times were very good. Where in previous series of Star Wars projects, they could be a little bit lackluster. What were your thoughts on the number of episodes and the runtime that we got?
Yeah. Well, like you said, my biggest issue with the live action shows that we've had in the past is especially like since Boba Fett and Ahsoka, when they started doing this 8 episode thing. And the thing is, it's not even just a Star Wars thing; it's a Disney Plus thing. I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning behind that decision is for live action shows, because it's not the only one. Percy Jackson had that same issue. A lot of the Marvel shows had that same issue, and I will say, I wish we had a little bit more time, but for the first time in quite a while, I don't feel like the runtime and the amount of episodes we had were a detriment to the show. I think they did really well with the time that they utilized. And so I wish there was more, and I feel like maybe it would have enhanced, a couple of scenes. Would have been nice to have a little epilogue tagged on to the end of that finale. But I don't think that it didn't feel rushed, which is the first time that I can say that, probably since Mandalorian season 1, if I'm being completely honest. It didn't feel rushed, and it didn't really drag at any point either. I thought it was extremely well paced out, and I just haven't really felt like that for any other live action show. So I was really happy with how they kept it moving. I felt like all of the episodes, not a single episode felt wasted in any way. All of them were used really well to keep the story moving forward, to keep the character development going, and it just felt very consistent overall and made it enjoyable to watch, because I feel like I didn't leave each episode feeling like I had, you know like there needed to be more. There were moments that I wished there could have been, but overall I actually felt that that was pretty well executed. And again, kind of the first time that I've ever felt like I've been able to say that, and I've seen a lot of people say likewise too. So I they did a good job with what they had, for sure. They did a really good job.
I know, yeah, yeah. With the ending of the series, I was very much quite surprised on how it ended. Um, not having like an epilogue or anything like that was an interesting choice. I don't know if
Yeah.
the showrunners did that with the idea of that they were going to get like a season two, further seasons. So, but it
Hmm.
was I was like the ending of the episode happens, and I was just kind of like, oh, is that it? And I kind of like fast forward because I was like, maybe there's
Yeah.
something here at the end credits or something. I was like, oh, that's
I
an
did the same thing.
interesting way.
I did the same thing. I do. If that's literally my one complaint with the timing and pacing, I just wish we got an epilogue. I wanted to see the kids kind of, back together again and just happy. Just kind of a nice little like minute long, just kind of to end cap. But I mean, otherwise, I think they really knocked it out of the park with everything else in terms of the pacing and the time run and everything like that. But I do wish we'd gotten a little epilogue at the end. I would have loved that.
So, all right, let's talk about uh the characters first and
Mhm.
foremost, because when it comes to child actors, sometimes they can be hit or miss depending on how they are instructed to act and things like that by show producers and developers and so on and so forth. But the child actors in this series were surprisingly really good. Like I was very much interested to see on how they would act, how the showrunners would have them do certain things, and I was pleasantly surprised that they were all very, very good in their individual roles.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The cast, those 4 kids are an extremely talented group. And I'll admit, one of my concerns going into the show was a repeat of the Jake Lloyd situation, which,
Hmm.
for anyone not familiar, was the actor for young Anakin Skywalker in Phantom Menace, who received a lot of, bullying and a lot of hatred and some just nasty stuff as a result of his performance in Phantom Menace, which personally I really enjoy, but a lot of people found to be not great. And, regardless of, yes, like you said, child actors could be hit or miss. I think that it's unfortunate to see anybody bullying children. So I was a little bit worried, and I know there was some concern in the community about how these kids were going to be received kind of by the community and whether or not there was going to be some issue with that. But on top of not only them delivering an incredible performance, I have been really happy to see that overall the conversation around these kids and their acting has been extremely positive. And that makes me really happy just because of the fact that in the past, Star Wars has not had a great track record with that. And so I was really happy to see that they've gotten a very positive reception in the community, and that this has been a very positive experience for them. And exactly like you said, they delivered incredible performances. And I think that John Watts and Christopher Ford are absolutely to be commended for their direction, and then the individual directors of the episodes too. And I mean, the directors of these episodes, they had some absolutely like huge names. I mean, the Daniels directed a couple of these episodes, and they were the creators behind Everything Everywhere All at Once. And we had Bryce Dallas Howard directing some of these episodes, and John Watts and Christopher Ford did direct some of the episodes. And between the talent of these kids and the talent of these directors, they talked a little bit about kind of the process of working with the kids and how they really wanted them to just enjoy this adventure. And I think that in them doing so and kind of creating an atmosphere for these kids to just be kids and have fun created a very genuine performance from these kids who were having fun in this adventure that they were having because they were having fun creating this project. And I love too that a lot of the dialogue was very realistic in that that is exactly how children talk. And as somebody who spends 99% of their working hours around children as a teacher on the side, can confirm that is how kids talk. And so there were just a lot of moments where I really, really enjoyed some of the bluntness of their delivery, because I could hear in my mind my own students saying things like that and saying and having conversations in the way that those kids had conversations, because it was just so genuine and it made me happy, and it was just kind of just an enjoyable thing to watch. And so I'm so happy, and want to give my heartfelt congratulations to that cast, because especially for many of them, this being one of their first big notable projects, I think it's something to really push their careers forward too. And I hope that it does that for them. And they really are a talented bunch of kids. That's for sure. They really are.
Of the kids, who was your favorite?
It's very hard for me to choose. I have my Neil earrings on
Oh
today.
yeah.
I am a proud Neil Nation member. I love Neil. But I think KB ended up actually coming out on top for me as my favorite character in the show. A lot of that having to do too with some of the disability representation that they kind of brought into the show via her character that I would love to touch on later. I won't yap too much about it now, but she ended up being my absolute favorite. However, I loved them all. I genuinely loved them all, but I think KV came out on top for me, which kind of surprised me, but I really love her.
I really enjoyed um they're they're all very good. Neil was definitely like he Neil was honestly such a vibe for me because just the
Yeah,
way he acted at times, because he's just like I loved him. I was like, oh my gosh, Neil is actually he's pretty chill. I can respect this guy.
he's very relatable. He's
He
very
is. He
relatable.
is. I was just like,
I related
oh,
to him a lot. I was like, this is how I would act if I was in this situation too. I would not be
yeah.
putting on a straight face. I would be scared. And his just kind of like he was chill, but then the moments where he was like the one who was panicking, I'm like, that would be me. If I were in this situation, if I were in this ship taking off right now, I would be Neil. I am Neil.
And then obviously, I mean, the kids were great, but obviously the main person who stole pretty much almost every scene he was in was Jude Law.
Yeah.
There's just always been a fantastic actor, whatever he's been in, and again, like every scene that he was in, it was just really good. And I mean, that's what you get from a highly profiled actor such as himself.
Right.
Uh, and you could tell. I feel like you may agree with this. I feel like with Jude Law, I think he understood what the assignment was of this show,
Hmm.
and you could tell he was just having fun with this character, and he was such a blast. Again, very much interested to see what happens with him, since we didn't get much of an epilogue um, at the end of the series. But I love Jude Law's character, and his many different names he went by.
Yes, his many, many different names. We got like Ezra 2.0 with him. And he had like 4 or 5 names. But Jude Law, yeah, is truly a phenomenal actor. And so, no surprise there that he was absolutely incredible. And I have a love hate relationship with Jod because he is an incredible character. But I have some beef with him over how he treated the kids. So, but no, truly, you're absolutely right. Jude Law very much brought that character to life in an incredible way and makes an incredible space pirate. Who would have thought? If you'd have told me that Jude Law 5 years ago would be starring in a Star Wars project where he'd be playing a space, Star Wars pirate captain, I don't know if I would have thought that that was something that Jude Law would excel in, and he absolutely did. Absolutely did.
And yeah, he just and I mean, I give the showrunners credit for his character, because like one of the things was he a Jedi or not, and I love how they did enough to make you question it, but also you keep stuff hidden until like the very moment it needs to be revealed. Because like because obviously we saw in the trailer him um Force left the key to him when he met the kids in the jail, and even Fern was just kind of like, it could be a magic trick. Like there's no way it's real, and it's
Right.
just like each little instances. I was just like, I kept asking myself, is he a Jedi or is he not? Because is he just a like what was his name in the Kenobi series?
I can't think of his name, but I was literally also just thinking about his character. I can't think of the character's name, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And I know that there, yeah, I saw some of the conversation online of, is it just a trick? Is he actually using the Force? What was his training like? And I love that they kept some of that kind of ambiguous. And I think that leaves, room for future potential with Jod's character going forward. But like you said, they did a great job of keeping that suspense until the moment that it needed to be revealed. And then that revelation really, really delivered. And Jod's character really surprised me because looking at the trailers up until like the week or two before it came out, I kind of thought I had Jod's character figured out. And I was absolutely wrong about that. But that was really exciting to kind of see the journey that his character took. And it wasn't what I expected it was going to be going into the show, but I think that I ended up really, really loving what they did with him. And again, yeah, huge kudos to the production crew and the directors for creating such an interesting character that I don't think we've ever really had anybody like Jod in the Star Wars universe before. And I think that that's a really fresh and kind of fun original thing that they really played around with, and I love that. So
Yeah, because a lot of people, because a lot of it was like, well, if he is a Jedi, was he like a youngling during like the Clone Wars, that kind of
that,
stuff? And I guess it seems like it seems like he was found by his master a little bit after Order 66.
yeah.
At least the way when he was just telling the story to Wim and Fern and everybody else about his master and things like that, how he saw them, gun her down. I was like, I would assume it's probably stormtroopers and not clone troopers.
Yeah,
I mean, I get well. No, 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 no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That. I guess technically that would have been stormtroopers at
yeah.
that point.
My
And so I was
my
like, okay,
theory was that because he said, I think specifically he was like they hunted her down, and
yeah,
so I saw a few people throw out there that she might have gotten taken out by an inquisitor too,
yeah.
shortly after Order 66 or something. And so again, that's something that I think if they did do a season two would actually be interesting to maybe find out more. And there was something that came out shortly after the finale wrapped up that they did originally have, it seems like, a flashback shot, and they did have someone cast to play his
Yes.
master. And it honestly, I'm a little bummed we didn't get to see that, but I think that there's absolutely potential for a flashback or something like that if we got a season two, and so maybe to save that for delving into Jod's story a little bit more, which I think is absolutely a direction that season two could go in, because yeah, his ending is a little bit ambiguous, and so I really thought that was a very interesting, again, kind of unconventional, almost reminded me of Ventress a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Like an opposite Ventress, because after Ventress had her Jedi Master, lost her Jedi Master, then Dooku found her, and so I was like, this is almost like the opposite of that. And I just thought that that was kind of interesting. I was kind of almost thinking of some parallels between those two characters, but yeah, his character was really something really cool for sure.
And so I think another thing I loved about this series. Well, hold on. So I think my I'm very curious on what the thought process was in regards to this show, because watching this show, it very much seems like Disney Disney kind of like told the people for Skeleton Crew, go in this corner, make this show while we focus on like the Acolyte or Andor or something like that. Because from what I've seen from internet, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, a lot of Star Wars fans enjoyed Skeleton Crew. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, we all know how the Acolyte went and things like that, but everybody seemed to be on board liking Skeleton Crew, and I can't remember it being promoted as much as it should have been. I feel like there was maybe like a lack of promoting the show, because we got the announcement maybe a couple of years ago during D23, or maybe it
It
was
was
Star Wars
it
Celebration.
was about 2.5 years ago at a D23. I think it was D23. I think 2022 was
Yeah,
when that was announced. It was part of that really large announcement where they announced the Ahsoka show as well, and a couple other shows that ended up, I think, getting cut. But it was a pretty large announcement, and then really nothing was said until less than a year before the show came out, and really we didn't get pretty much any information on it until, I think, like, I remember very distinctly, it was very late July, early August, because I was just about to leave to go visit a friend of mine who also creates Star Wars content, the Jedi Maddie. Her and I got together, and it was literally like 2 days before that, and so we were all excited when we got together because we were like, oh my gosh, we finally just got Skeleton Crew stuff, and we were all excited about that. But it was only like 4 months before the show came out, and so they didn't,
yeah,
there was a lot of promotion, but it was in a short span of time, unlike some other shows where we've kind of gotten a
yeah.
trailer and then a trailer and bits here and there. It kind of all came out at once, and it was a lot, and then they were like, here's the trailer, here's another trailer, the show is happening in 3 months, go. And it was a lot of hype in a shorter period of time, so
Yeah, it was because I don't understand, because I was like, I don't know how Disney just didn't promote this better at the beginning, because
yeah.
everybody was enjoying it. There was a lot of good praising of it, good characterization, things like that. Um, yeah, I guess maybe Disney's priorities were just in all over the place in regards to their different projects that they're doing,
A
and because
lot of projects came out this year for not
yeah,
only Wars, but like a million other Disney properties. And I think it's interesting because I've seen similar comments towards some of the other projects that got released this year. And so I think it was just a year that maybe Disney kind of overall spread themselves a little thin. And
Yep.
there was just a lot of content happening very like pretty much constantly throughout the year. And so I think that and a lot of Star Wars content between the fact that we got Bad Batch season 3, we
Yep.
had Tales of the Empire, we had Acolyte, and then Skeleton Crew, and also even that Lego project. And
Oh
so
yeah.
a lot that happened this year, and I think that kind of in general for all of those projects, it was the promotion happened in a very short window before the project actually dropped, because Bad Batch was announced, and it was announced less than like the date was dropped less than 2 months before the date that the season was going to premiere. And so that also was just a very short span of time where I was like, whoa, we finally got a date and it's in less than 2 months time. That is very fast. And so just some things like that this year. And so maybe with next year, or I guess this year now, 2025, not having as much, it seems like promotion might kind of start a little bit earlier, because the only project we really have on the docket so far is Andor season 2. And I'm sure we'll get more announcements at Celebration, but hopefully
Oh
maybe
yeah.
there'll be a bit more time for some promotion this year with things being a little calmer. It was a busy 2024 was a busy year, but in my opinion, it was a very good year to be a Star Wars fan. So,
Yeah.
I can't complain too much.
um, but so with Skeleton Crew, I really enjoyed the whole mystery of At-Atten,
Hmm.
and trying to figure out what that was about, and because I love a good mystery, like
Hmm.
I enjoy it. And it kept having me wondering, like, what is the purpose of this planet? Like, why is it so important? Because I did like a small, I didn't do like a weekly episode review of Skeleton Crew. I did a review of the first 2 episodes. I think they both dropped on the same day,
They did,
and
yeah.
so I was, because like watching it, I was just like, in the back of my mind, the way Wim was talking, I was just like, he's talking as if the Jedi are still around, and I was just kind of like, that doesn't, because obviously us as fans know
Right.
that's depending on what we're looking at, that's obviously not the case as much, but like just the way, and like, his dad gives him these old Republic credits and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like, what is actually going on here? And we get the talks with like the great assessment test, and just all these little things, and then we once the kids get out of Atten, and then like you get SM-33 or Smee. I love the little
Love that.
pirate rhetoric that kept going on in this show, but
Right.
him being like, I never heard of no Atten and all this kind of stuff, and I was just like, what is this? What is going on here with this? Why is this a big mystery? And I'm happy with the payoff. Like, there were like probably breadcrumbs, obviously, sprinkled throughout the show in regards, like, the way the pirates reacted to the credits. And then them talking about how At is this legendary place full of treasure.
Mhm.
So, what did you think of the whole mystery of At?
Like you said, I thought it was done really well, and I liked how they did a really good job of giving you just little bits of information and little hints as it went on without revealing everything until the end. They kept that suspense going. But you said something earlier, and it was that you felt like this, there was a lot of, you kind of felt some connections to like Treasure Planet and Treasure Island. And funny thing is, Treasure Planet is my favorite movie of all time, which I know
That's a
is a
good
Star
movie.
Wars, a little criminal that my favorite movie isn't a Star Wars movie. Revenge of the Sith is a close second, but Treasure Planet's my favorite movie, and I really love Treasure Island as well. I read parts of the book in high school, and so I'm very familiar with the plot line of Treasure Island, which is what Treasure Planet is based off of. And so my theory was I kind of had it figured out, with what Atten was. I hadn't figured out that it was mint, and I really liked that. I thought that that was really cool, because I was kind of trying to figure out exactly what this planet was going to be. But similar to how Treasure Island is, I'm like, okay, the way that they're hinting at this at Atten is this, this treasure island, and the fact that the Onyx Cinder, which is clearly, then we learned, this legendary pirate ship, was buried on this planet. And I kind of had a flashback as we were going through those first couple episodes to like the first scene in Treasure Planet, where you find out about how Treasure Island kind of came to be and the myth
Mm.
surrounding that, and the pirate who went raiding around all these different worlds and then stored all his treasure in one place, and made it so that nobody would be able to find it unless you had the key. And I was like, and so I kind of had that running in the back of my mind throughout the duration of the show. And I was like so jazzed throughout it too. I was like, this is Treasure Island in Star Wars, and I'm living my best life. Like, again, when I said earlier that if there was like a target audience for the target audience of this show, it was me. Like, I was the person this show was created for, because that is like my niche of niches. And I was legitimately just absolutely living my best life, finding connections throughout the duration of the show to both Treasure Planet and Treasure Island, and even The Giver as well. I heard a lot of people kind of throw that in there with kind of the utopia of this, of at Atten, and the assessment that they had, and kind of how you fit into the great work. And as somebody who read The Giver and really loves that book as well, I was just like, my literature nerdy brain was just diving in and like picking out and sitting there going, ooh, I that's a reference to a thing, or like, oh, that ties into this. And I was just like, literally every episode my brain was just whirling, and I was just thriving off of picking apart all of the little details that they dropped throughout each episode, and just getting enthralled in the mystery. And then, like you said, the payoff was fantastic. And the idea of it being the Republic credit mint, I was like, that's so perfect. And it was a way that I thought, taking the kind of story of Treasure Island and sitting it so perfectly in the Star Wars universe, that was so well executed. And I would have never thought of that, but it worked out so well for the show. And so I was, yes, very very happy generally, with that whole thing. And that mystery was just so much fun, and just kept me on my toes really for the whole show here. It was great. It was really great.
Because like a part of it was just kind of like I was just like, how long has this planet been hidden? Because
Right.
that was like it was just like have they? Because I think Wim's dad talks about it in the final episode where like we were going to tell you about this when you were older and things like that. And so I'm like, you knew about this entire like how far does this go back? Like
Right.
it's like are we
It's interesting to
obviously
figure
before the
out.
Empire? Yeah, it was just
Yeah, and I was going to say, my theory is that it definitely goes back to before the Empire, and I would say probably before the Clone Wars. They didn't give us kind of an exact period, but I would imagine, I'm not sure if it would quite be High Republic area, but probably at least a decent bit before the Clone Wars, because I mean, with the fact that it was these older Republic credits, obviously before, would have had to been before the Empire. But they genuinely seemed to believe that the Jedi were still the protectors of the galaxy, thriving in that. Just the it's so fascinating to like look at the galaxy from their perspective and be like, they don't know about any of this. They didn't know about the Clone Wars, didn't know about the Empire. It's just so interesting to be like, this little tiny corner of the galaxy completely untouched by all of this. Like, all of what Star Wars is to us is all of that. It's all of the Empire, and it's all of the rebellion, and it's, the Jedi Order. And then there's just this little corner that's just so like completely removed from it all. And that is, to me, one of the most fascinating things. And that we got to kind of like, that John Watts and Christopher Ford basically put us in the perspective of the kids, to be able to view the galaxy as if
yeah.
none of that had ever happened, is potentially one of the coolest things I think we've really gotten to kind of have the perspective of. in Star Wars. Such a unique way to view it. And I was devastated for poor Wim when Jad told him what happened to the Jedi in the finale. I knew that it was coming, and I actually tweeted about it. And like episode 4 or 5, I was like, I hate to think about the moment Wim is going to get his heart shattered when he learns about what happened to the Jedi, and seeing the look of just shock and devastation on his face, like, tore my heart out a little bit, because that was his dream. And he had looked so much up to the idea of the Jedi, and to just watch his heart drop when he found out, it that killed me a little bit inside. I was devastated for him. I really was. Also, don't mind me. I'm gonna go get a little more light here real quick. It's
Oh,
getting
you're fine.
the Midwest, so I forget how early it gets so dark. It's so bad.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But yeah, it was. So I just love the mystery. It was like really, really good. I'm trying to think what else was it. Um, I think what was another thing about that. It'll come to me in a second, I'm sure. So, we'll see. But
There we go. I'm back, and now you can see again. There we go.
I think. Oh, so like another surprising thing about it was in the ending of the episode where the supervisor, who I think pretty much a lot of people kind of figured it was going to be a droid, but even the supervisor was kind of like, "Yeah, John, you're kind of lying, because I know the Jedi were executed," and
Right.
so I was like, "Oh, so this droid probably has like some kind of connection that it picked that up." So that's
somehow. Yeah, exactly. And I'll admit, I didn't really know what the supervisor was going to be. I'd seen some theories here and there, and I was kind of not quite sure, but I was a little surprised it was a droid. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. That feels very appropriate. And my kind of theory, and I think probably the running theory is that I can't remember the name of the great pirate captain, that was the one who had left all his treasure on at and the one that they had in the sea shanty, which we got a sea shanty in Star Wars. Like, I feel like I need to take a moment to say how what a great moment that was. And for, again, my very pirate loving heart, that scene, chef's kiss, beautiful, amazing. But my theory is that obviously this captain programmed this droid to keep things running, because with the treasure island kind of idea, or even Goonies, is a similar concept, that even after the pirate captain is long dead and gone, he doesn't want anybody to touch his treasure. Classic pirate captain is this buried treasure that's been buried forever. And so the idea of him having a droid to keep this world hidden away and operating in the way that it would continue to like build up his treasure even after he was gone is such a cool concept. And so I was a little bit surprised, but I was like, yeah, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And so I thought that whole, just the entire concept of AT-AT and all of that was just very well executed. It was really.
Yeah, because like even with SM-33, I can think of that scene in Treasure Planet where Benny is missing his mind, and the captain had his mind, and so it was like, because SM-33 was just like, oh yeah, the captain told me to. I think they were on at. What was the other one?
At Akron, I think it was. They were on Akron, yeah.
Because they found all the pillars for the other planets, but the one for Aten was basically destroyed. And he was just like, oh yeah, the captain made me destroy the coordinates and to kill anybody who came asking about it. And so it's just kind of like, oh, see.
I also tweeted about that episode. I was like, so SM-33's been Ben this whole time. Totally different personalities, though. I
Yeah,
love Ben,
very
but
much.
I think if I had to choose between SM33 and Ben, I would go with SM33. I'm not gonna lie, Ben gets a little annoying at times. Sorry, I love him, love Treasure Planet, but I would probably choose SM33. I'd also feel significantly safer with SM33. I feel like Ben would be a liability, and SM33 is definitely an asset. So I thought that was SM33 was also, if I had to choose another character to be my favorite, SM33 was definitely one of my favorites and is up there in my favorite droids in all of Star Wars now, pretty
Oh,
easily. Because a pirate droid named SM33, aka Smee, like the whole concept is amazing. His piratey accent, just everything about him, even the rat in his eye, whose
yeah.
name is Snowball. It's not ever said in the show, but I looked it up and it's on Wikipedia. His name is Snowball. Snowball the
Oh,
rat that lives in SM33's eye. I love that. I love that. Like, just how did they come up with that? I want to know. I want to know. I want to be a fly on the wall in the room of John Watts and Christopher Ford saying, so we're going to have, the pirate droid. We're going to call him SM33 Smee. Let's have a rat in his eye. Let's just have a, rather than a parrot on the shoulder, let's put a space rat in his eye socket. I want to know how that conversation went because Snowball was one of my favorite parts of the show. And also the fact that then Neil got really concerned about Snowball. And when they sent Jod back to go find SM33, the fact that Neil said to him, he's like, make sure you get the rat that lives in his eye. That was one of my favorite moments in the whole show. I was just like, Neil, you are truly a child after my own heart, because I would also have been extremely concerned about the rat in his eye as well. And I was very glad that we saw him in the finale episode because he crawled up again into Neil's hand. And I was like, I'm happy. Snowball's fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody lived, including the rat. This is great. It was amazing.
um, that all that was great. The pirates themselves were fun. You
Yeah,
know, they did their job.
they
I
were
love
piratey.
Brutus's look.
It was very
Uh,
cool. Very
very
cool.
good. I I guess I'm okay with how he went out.
I
Um,
didn't expect it, but
yeah,
he kind of had it coming. I don't really blame Jad too much
yeah, that's
for
true.
wanting to take him out. But I thought that the pirate crew, yeah, that they were pretty well done. I thought it was cool that we had Vane back again. I do kind of wish, because he was really the only character. He's the only character that we've ever seen in Star Wars before. He was the
Yeah,
only character we had. I wish he'd gotten a little bit more time because he didn't really have as big of a role as I thought he would.
yeah,
Considering that he was brought from the Mandalorian, so I would have that's maybe one of my I have very few critiques of the show. I'll be perfectly honest, but and I tend to be a fairly critical person, and so that's probably one of the only few that I have is that I feel like Vane needed a bit of a bigger part because he was kind
yeah.
of hyped up. Everybody was really excited, and then we didn't really get to see too much of him. So maybe in the future, but overall they were pretty cool. And again, they were very piratey. They fulfilled their piratey role pretty well. I feel like they, for adapting pirates into Star Wars, which obviously we've seen it with Hondo before, but really getting to focus on that, I thought it was pretty cool. And I really liked the idea of being the equivalent of being walking the plank to getting thrown out the airlock. And I was like, yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Getting thrown out the airlock as opposed to walking the plank. I was like, that is a very piratey thing. And then again, the sea shanty. I just have to. That was
Yeah.
that was
That
my
that
favorite
whole
moment.
that whole scene was kind of like Jod being on trial and like Brutus having the equivalent of like a sand and like an hourglass.
Uh huh.
It was that whole scene where Jod is talking about like how he's hungry, all he's ever had is scraps. I was just like, oh my gosh, I love Jude Law.
It was
Know
intense.
it
His
was.
performance there was phenomenal. That was probably, I think that was my favorite scene for Jod. Very easily was that scene. I think that was kind of the highlight of his the culmination of his character, and it very much kind of reminded me. It was very like a Pirates of the Caribbean feel with like the Pirates Code and them having this like trial.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like Jod is almost the less eccentric, more slightly more serious version of Jack Sparrow. Definitely not nearly as off mentally
Yeah.
as Jack Sparrow is, but it kind of, whoa, hello, why am I sideways? Not sure why that happened. I'm gonna adjust myself here. There we go. Okay,
Oh.
sorry about that.
No, you're
Anyways,
fine.
I'm not sure what happened there. I twisted. But anyways, that was my favorite Jod scene for sure. That and the lightsaber moment that he had at the end of episode 5, where he brought the lightsaber into his hand and it ignited. That was one of the coolest shots in the show. And for me, the moment that solidified, okay, yeah, Jod's not making up this force thing. He definitely is able to use the force. I wasn't, we obviously didn't have any background for him, but that was the scene that confirmed it for me, where I was like, okay, whether Jedi or not, he's legit. It's not a trick. And again, that scene was just the way it was shot, and the music in that moment towards the end of episode 5 kind of left me with my jaw on the floor a little bit. That was a really great moment.
Yeah, because like Jod, like he wasn't a villain. Like I think he did care about the kids. Like that,
I
like he
agree.
definitely had moments showing where he did care about them, and he probably in some way maybe saw himself in them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but he was just man, it's hard to describe it. He just
Yeah.
wasn't a villain. Like I thought he was going to, because like I think part of it was like people thought he would have been a guy that could be redeemed. Like so he
Mm-hmm.
would do something heroic or something like that at the end that would redeem himself. No, he
Yeah.
he didn't. And so it was, I mean, it
I
was
thought it
just
I thought it was really interesting because, again, coming back to Treasure Planet a little bit, my first thought going into the show was that, yeah, he was gonna have his Captain Silver moment at the end, where in that scene in Treasure Planet he has to choose between the treasure and saving Jim, and he chooses saving Jim. And I was at first, as we were just starting the show, I was like, okay, he's gonna betray the kids, but then he'll come around and he'll ultimately choose to save them over saving the treasure. And I was wrong. And I was like, okay, maybe he's just really just not a great guy. And then we kind of got to the end of episode 7, and I was like ready to throw some fists at him a little bit there, because I was like, how dare you make Wim cry? That was unnecessary. How dare you? But getting around to the finale in episode 8, I was talking with a couple of some creator friends after episode 8 wrapped up, and what a lot of us were talking about was that while I would say he was the villain of the show, but I wouldn't say he's not a sympathetic villain.
right.
Um, and the way that we kind of talked about it was, with kind of the just very brief, background that we got for Jod. And I think we see this in a lot of, characters in Star Wars, that the priority is survival. And in a galaxy that is very dark and full of a lot of people who are very much only looking out for themselves, we even see Ezra like that in the very beginning of Rebels. He's living on the streets of Lothal, stealing food and stealing from the Empire to get by, not because he's trying to really help anybody. Like, he might, kind of be like, oh, well, I'll save this person, but then I'll, try to get some money from them or something like that. I might kind of help somebody out, but I'm doing it to survive. We very much kind of discussed that Jod had a very similar mindset, that everything he did was for survival. And so I think he absolutely did care about the kids. And I think that the way that manifested for him, which I'm not necessarily saying is good, but I feel like in his mind, he thought he was teaching them a really valuable lesson about how to survive in the galaxy. Kind of one of those moments where, like, you should be grateful to me because, it's a harsh world out there and you need to learn that it's a harsh world. That kind of idea where he had it kind of almost set in his mind that he was just, showing them how it is and just doing what he had to do to survive. And so I think that there absolutely is a sympathetic side to that, in that that's really the only way he knew how to live, especially if as a child, like a lot of Star Wars characters we see spend a lot of their lives on the streets, spend a lot
Yeah.
of their time just fighting for survival. And that's really what the Empire did, was create a galaxy where so many people were just fighting to survive. And so he's one of the people who that kind of shaped his life and shaped his worldview. And then he carries that over into his interactions with the kids, and he kind of tries to do the same to them. And again, I would still classify him as villain, and I wouldn't say his actions are justified in any way, but
Right.
that it does make sense, the perspective that he had. But that it was clear that he wasn't actually willing to harm the kids. He talked a lot of talk, but when it came down to it, there was a moment that I thought mirrored a moment that I really love, again, in Treasure Planet, where there's a moment in Treasure Planet where Jim is escaping with the map off of the ship, and Silver pulls up his rifle and he's got it lined up and he's ready
Yeah.
to shoot, and he can't pull the trigger, and he kind of sighs. And there was a really identical moment to that where he had his pistol up and he was ready, he had his blaster up, and he couldn't pull
Couldn't do
the
it.
trigger, and it cost him everything. And I was like, that's that moment. It was a lot more subtle. And I don't think that he, was wanting to help the kids in any way, but he couldn't go so far as to take a life. And I thought that spoke a lot about his character in a very subtle way. And so I would really love to see more from him going forward. I think if we got him in a season 2, I definitely think that he would have been arrested, obviously by the New Republic. But I think it would be interesting to see if maybe he, got off for good behavior or something, kind of where his adventures might take him as maybe a slightly reformed man, kind of like a Hondo-esque, where Hondo's not a good guy, but he's less of a bad guy. Maybe by like the end of Rebels, he's grown maybe a little bit.
A little
And
bit.
so I think that could be fun in some way, is to kind of see Jod be maybe a little bit less of a bad guy and go on some other adventures. And I would love to see that, and I would love to see Jude Law do that, because again, as we've said so many times now, he was just incredible. And so literally any more of Jod that we could get, I think would be fantastic. So I'll take whatever we can get.
So speaking of which, can you see the comments as well, or is
I don't think I can. Let me check and see. I don't know if I can.
Okay, because we have a comment here.
Oh, I can see one. I can see one. Oh, there we go. I can see them. Oh, well, that's my friend Liz. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Crew shirt on for today, and my Neil earrings, because I was like, I can't talk about Skeleton Crew and not have my Skeleton Crew t-shirt on. I like literally. Right. I wish I have like my backpack, all the stuff that Star Wars sent me. I like want to set it around me like a little Skeleton Crew shrine, which I do have a little Skeleton Crew shelf amongst my Star Wars setup, all of my Funko Pops. And I did splurge on myself and get the Onyx Cinder Lego set, which was a really fun build, and has a lot of cool little features and different like moving parts and things like that. It's a very, very cool build, and it was really fun to do. So I have my little Skeleton Crew shrine over there, which is great. So
one of my favorite episodes was the KB episode, and it was so interesting because like KB had been pretty chill throughout the most of the part, but then this episode, like I was like KB, why are you being so aggressive all of a sudden? Like what is this?
She really kind of stepped forward a little bit in that one. She kind of she kind of spoke up for herself. That is my favorite episode, for sure. And if it's okay, I would love to yap about that one for a little second, because I really really loved the representation that her character brought. There's a lot of characters in Star Wars that we see disabilities in. Obviously, Kanan is blind, and we have and I know this character in Rogue One as well. And then, I mean, obviously, Anakin and Luke, all the Skywalkers are all, missing
Yeah.
limbs and things like that. So there's disability in Star Wars, but so far as to actually kind of touch on the subject was kind of something new for the Star Wars universe. And as somebody who is disabled too, which I myself have talked a lot about on my page about some of my various disabilities and kind of talked about disability representation in that way and how important that's been for me. And there's a video that I'll hopefully post soon, actually talking specifically about KB when it comes to that. And so if you watch my videos on TikTok or Instagram, you can look out for that one coming soon. But I was really touched by that moment that she had with Wim, and they kind of hinted at it throughout the show. I know that her parents had referred to it in like the second episode when one of her moms had referred to, that she had medical necessities and that they were really worried about her in terms of that. And that Fern had hinted at it a couple times. And she had some concern going into like when they were at that like spa planet that she was worried about certain aspects of her hardware getting corroded. And so kind of all of that coming to a head in that episode 6 and that moment with Wim was really, really beautiful because it shed a lot of light on the duality of disability, which is the fine balance of wanting to be acknowledged as capable and not having other people put limitations on you, because there are so many things that people who have disabilities are able to do, and there's a lot of empowerment in that. But then there also is the side of it where there is limitations, and those limitations can be hard to accept for yourself and also can be hard for other people to accept. And I myself have experienced that, where I've received negative feedback for expressing that I have a limitation in a way, or I'm not able to do that thing because that would be something for blah 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 reason that I'm not able to do physically because of some of the disabilities I have. And that can be a really hard conversation to have with people. And so watching her have that conversation with Wim was, for me, very cathartic. And I know I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing, that they did a really good job of fitting that scene very well into the episode and into the flow overall, so it didn't feel like just random conversation. It fit in really nicely with the character development and the relationship between her and Wim. And they my goodness, those kids acted their hearts and souls out in that moment, and I was in absolute tears during that scene. And it was really just a very touching moment. And I want to give huge props to Kiriana, who played KB, for portraying that moment really, really well and really, really beautifully. And then I loved to see, as she kind of gained some confidence from that conversation, then in episode 7 and especially in episode 8 in the finale, she really had her moment to kind of step forward and ended up being the one that managed to contact the New Republic, and that she ended up really having to push herself, and I mean almost did crash in the Onyx, and kind of ended up having her own moment to be a hero. And I thought they did such a good job with her. And so yeah, from that episode, she really became, honestly, I would say is maybe in my top 25, which I have a lot of favorite Star Wars characters, maybe even my top favorite Star Wars characters, though, just because I saw so much of myself in her in that moment. And again, it was just a very cathartic moment that I thought was so well written, so well acted, so well executed, and just was really beautiful. It was just really beautiful. And then, of course, there was a giant crab like 5 minutes later that was trying to eat them. And I was like, okay, and now we're back to the action. We're back to the action. And so, no, that was a really, really nice moment, and that was my favorite episode for sure. It was a fun one too. Again, we got giant crabs. I love those little baby crabs too. I wanted one. I would love to know. John Watts, hit me up. I'd love to know where I could get one of those, please. I want one as a pet. Thank you very much.
So yeah, let me see if I got this. I don't know. Oh wait.
Reality Fern. So then just tell her that. I can't do that. Why not? because
I'm not sure why the
patience for
subtitles
that.
are in a different language. It's weird,
You know
but
how she just I'll have 0 friends again. It's so dumb. Anyway, you could just be friends with me and Neil.
I thought that was a
Is
very
this enough? It'll have to be. Take the torch. Melt the wires.
Wim was such a good friend in the scene. I was so proud. I was like, you're such a good kid.
yeah, he was. Cause like what was so crazy about this whole thing, like this was like the closest that you could see a kid potentially passing away in a show. Like it was just right there on the verge. It was like so insane to.
It had my heart racing a little bit. I was like, she's not gonna die, but like I felt the tension of the situation, and I felt it for Wim too, because I'm like, he's keeping calm, he's reacting really well, which again, as a disabled person, when you have a flare up or you have something serious medically happen, it can be really scary to be around people, to not know how they're going to react, if they're going to react calmly, and if they're going to be able to assist you, or if they're going to freak out and kind of lose it. And so Wim reacted so well in this moment, and seeing how calmly he handled this and how he spoke so reassuringly to KB, I was just like, that is a good friend right there. That's somebody I was like, I would love to have a friend like Wim. And I do. I'm grateful for the friends like Wim that I have in my life. But it was really a beautiful scene. It was so good.
Well, system shutdown. What? Probably thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life. Anyway, thanks, Jedi.
I loved when she called him Jedi. That's where I was really gonna cry right now. But oh my gosh, when she called him Jedi, I was like, that moment between them was so good. There's so many good character moments in this show. There were so many good character moments in this show, and that was definitely my favorite one. But the character development for all of the kids, something that I was really impressed by too was when you have an ensemble cast like that, it's so difficult to make sure each member of the cast gets their own kind of moment and gets kind of equal amount of time in the overall storytelling. And they did that really well. And I've had problems with other shows that have been ensemble casts that I've been like, well, this character didn't really get. Bad Batch is one of them. Wrecker never got his moment in the sun as much as I felt the others did, and that always kind of bothered me a little bit. I love Bad Batch, but I was like, Wrecker needed like an episode. I needed him to have an episode where he stuck out a little bit more. And it just kind of never quite happened. And so for this one, I felt like, Neil kind of had his moment in episode 4. And Fern obviously had her moment when she became captain of the ship. And Wim, was maybe the more central character. But even so, they all had, I think, pretty equal importance overall in the show, and got an equal amount of character development, and just overall I felt like, depth and dimension as a character. And that was very refreshing to see, because I was definitely watching the trailers. I kind of got the impression that like KB and even Fern were kind of going to take a little bit more of a backseat to Wim and Neil, and especially Wim, and that didn't happen. And so I was very, very pleasantly kind of surprised to see all of them really get their moment to shine, which was really nice. So
yeah, I really loved it too, because it's like the kind of the smile that KB gave when Wim was like, "Well, you could be friends with me and Neil,"
right?
And so, because like, I mean, obviously, because because like for the most part of the series, for the most part of the series, we just see Fern and KB together, and like we don't really see them interacting with anybody else. But like we all have like our best friends and stuff like that, to where it's just that's the wrong thing.
KB, I am so sorry for not listening. No, I'm sorry.
We've all had those
I
moments with
was
our best
afraid to
friends.
tell you when there's things I can't do. It's okay. You're my best friend. My best friend.
Do you guys hear that?
And then they get attacked by a giant crab.
And then they got attacked by a giant crab. And then they got attacked by Tamatoa from Moana, which is what all I could think about. I had like the Shiny song from Moana playing in the back of my head. It's all I could picture. But no, that episode in terms of character development, for all of them, was really the one that I felt that culminated in really well, that they kind of built up to not quite a plot climax, but like an emotional climax, kind of at that end. And then they had that group hug. And then it was nice that we got that kind of group hug moment in the finale too, when they were sitting on top of the pile of credits, which is funny because I was watching some behind the scenes stuff and the kids were all saying that pile of credits was very pokey. And they were like, we sat on top of that pile of credits for so long and they really hurt to sit on. I love watching the behind the scenes different clips with the cast too, because watching those kids interact is exactly like watching the show. It's like getting more clips from the show because they just have so much chemistry with each other in the way that they constantly joke back and forth, and you can see they have their little inside jokes. Then they'll look at each other during interviews and they'll just start snickering like kids do, and it's just so funny to watch. It's really, if I need a little pick me up, I'll watch some of the interviews between the kids because they're just funny. They're such funny kids. And again, it's nice to see that they had so much fun getting to create some of those moments, and have such fond memories of all of those moments on set and a lot of memories and stuff like that. So it's just fun. If I had to give one of a couple words to describe the show, fun is definitely one of them because it really was. It was just fun to watch. It was just enjoyable. It really was.
This was definitely like one of my favorite parts, or one of my favorite scenes in the episode, or like in the early part of the series.
These kids really from
It's like
I'll tell you what I know, and not my words, for I won't be repeating them again. They're definitely from somewhere.
I watched that and I was like, what was even the point of that?
I
just loved it.
I love how I think SM33 kind of knew, and like the kids, had their suspicions, especially Fern and KB had their suspicions about Jod the whole time. SM33 totally had him figured out from the beginning because he could tell the moment that those two interacted for the first time. SM33 never liked him. He always seemed to be like, there's something up with you. And I was like, he never liked him from the beginning, did he?
Exactly.
SM33 knew from the beginning something was up with Jod. I loved SM33. Gosh, I missed the show. That it's over. Talking about it, I'm like, I'm gonna go rewatch it tonight. It's making
So I was like, you know what? I love the Onyx Cinder. It looks great. It looks wonderful. But then it shed its skin, and I was like, yeah, I love this ship. This ship.
It's such a cool
beautiful.
ship. Such a unique ship. It's such a unique ship design from pretty much anything we've seen before. I don't think there's really another ship like it. And yeah, once it kind of shed its outer layer and was all shiny and new, it was very cool. And again, there were a lot of scenes from when they were exploring the Onyx Cinder in the first episode that reminded me a lot of Goonies, and when they're kind of exploring through the tunnels, and one of the moments where KB pops up through one of the vents reminded me of Data, and there's a moment in Goonies where he kind of does the same thing and like pops up out of nowhere, and all of the pipes and the webs and the skeletons and everything. It was just very piratey-esque and just such a neat concept for a ship, and I'm sure a fun set to be on too, with kind of how cool that ship was. So it was a very cool design for sure, and they had a lot of fun adventures with that. I loved watching Neil try to fly the Onyx for the first time in episode 3. that was really funny, and one of my I think probably the highlight from that episode for me, and one of my favorite Neil moments was just his utter panic at trying to fly the ship, and just not having, poor thing, having zero confidence in what he's doing, and Wim being very mad that Neil was the one who got to drive the ship, until of course Jod told him he could hop in the gunner seat, and he was like, okay, nope, yep, I'm good now, I get to shoot things, awesome. Watching him and Fern like have the a little like
Competition,
bat
little.
between who was gonna shoot down which ship. It was, oh my gosh, that was a great scene. It was really fun. We got to see some of those moments from the trailer, and I had been excited for that scene. And when we finally got that, I was like, oh, that was great. That was awesome.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, it was just such a good series. I mean, it's like, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, I always look forward to each episode. I'm trying to think if there was like anything really negative. Nothing really negative. I'm sure there's like some nitpicks that I could probably like sit down and really think about. But
Yeah.
I
Like I
was
said earlier, my criticisms are few. There's some extremely nitpicky things, but genuinely, and I've watched every episode, I think except for the finale multiple times. I watched the first two episodes several times through after they premiered, and was rewatching them with my family, or my husband if he wasn't home. Although I will say he loved it so much, sometimes he was beating me to the couch at 9 p.m. and he would be sitting there like, it's gonna be on, sit down. And he was like counting down the seconds. It was really funny. He loved it. But I've definitely rewatched a lot of the episodes multiple times, and despite that, really have almost no criticisms of the show. I think I mean, the team behind this show is legendary. John Watts and Christopher Ford have some incredible titles beneath their belt. And so I'm not too surprised, but I think the execution, and I'm sure even just kind of the extra amount of time that the show got unexpectedly because of the SAG-AFTRA strike, which delayed the show for a year. It was supposed to premiere in 2023 in the summer, and obviously ended up being delayed pretty significantly. There was a lot of time and a lot of care put into the show, and the whole reason that it got made in the first place was because this was kind of a passion project for Christopher Ford and John Watts. They talked about in several interviews how they're the one that kind of approached Lucasfilm a little bit. They'd kind of been approached by Lucasfilm, like, do you want to do a show? And they were like, here's our concept. And they'd been working on this concept, and it was in, kind of in the idea stages for quite a while. And so it's clear that they put so much love and attention and painstaking detail work into this show to truly make it as flawless as they could, and in terms of storytelling, in terms of the visuals, and just the overall characters and everything. I mean, they went so far to so many lengths to use as many visual things as possible, a lot of puppets and things like that, make sure they were shooting things in a very similar way and using all of the correct angles to kind of bring that nostalgic feeling of A New Hope and the original trilogy, and the incredible reference we had to the holiday special, which they had to reshoot, and had to analyze that scene from the holiday special and recreate the costumes, and then reshoot from the right angles to be able to recreate that and use it literally for like 2 seconds in that first episode, to have that little niche little throw in there. Just so much detail went into this show. A lot of practical effects were used, and Neil is a great example because he was not CGI for the majority of the show. They used a combination of puppeteering, and obviously had Robert Timothy Smith, with some of the, how they'll do like the face augmentation, the CGI and stuff like that, but had him doing all of those scenes, and then had a puppeteering head and things like that for Neil. And so the combination of the computer generated and then the practical effects for that made it look very, very real. And they really talked about trying to avoid the CGI as much as possible, and do as much practical effects as they possibly could with a lot of the Star Wars creatures and things like that, just because that's kind of what Star Wars is known for. And I love to see that tradition be carried through, and how they used that in, The Mandalorian with Grogu, and how they used the puppeteering in that. And so they kind of carried that through to this project, and that detail really shows through, I think, in how much people love the show, how much people appreciated some of those niche moments and references to the original trilogy and to other projects that people love, like Goonies and E.T. and Stranger Things and Treasure Island, Treasure Planet, Echo, which I know was one that was referenced, and things like that. There were so many different little tiny things, and so I feel like you could watch the show, a million times and still not pick up every single little detail that was put into it. It's really truly incredible, and a testament to what happens when people who are genuinely fans and have a passion to create something, and tell a really great story, and that often results in a really beautiful story being told. And so I'm just so happy that I got to experience watching this show. And I'm, of course, extremely grateful to Star Wars for kind of including me in that with the PR package that I received, which was my first PR package from Star Wars, and was a really cool experience. And to have it be for Skeleton Crew, of all shows, made me really happy. And so I felt kind of included in on that. And that's just something that's really special. And I'm really grateful to Star Wars and to Swagman, for that, and for including me in the Skeleton Crew family. So that's really genuinely something that I never would have envisioned for myself if you'd asked me a few years ago, and is something that is still crazy. I'm still pinching myself over that. So that was really cool.
Because didn't she go to the premiere?
She did. She is California based, so
Oh yeah, that's true.
Premiere, which is awesome. And I always love getting to see her go to these events, and every single time she's like, why did they invite me? And it's like, because you deserve to be there. Why are you asking that? I love her. She's a dear friend, and I'm excited to get to see her for the first time in Japan. It'll be the first time we meet, which will be awesome. But yeah, so that was truly something really special. I felt so honored. I can tell you, I freaked out when I saw that package arrive at my door. Wow. And that was a big box. That was a really big box.
Bet.
I was like, I don't remember ordering anything. And unwrapping that, I just about lost my freaking mind. So that was a really, really cool. That was a core memory moment for me as a Star Wars fan, for sure. And I can tell you, I was sitting there with all my Skeleton Crew swag each episode, just like absolutely ready and excited for what was going to happen next. So it truly was a really special experience. It really was.
Yeah. So right now, the only Star Wars project coming out in 2025 that we know of is Andor season 2, which is in April.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Right after Celebration.
Yep. Couple days and after. So obviously probably since the Star Wars Celebration, they're definitely going to announce. They should be announcing a lot more things. I've seen, I don't know, depending on like what's credible and what's not. I've seen people talk about some new animated projects in the works and stuff like that.
I'm hoping.
And then obviously 2026, again, the only thing I think of that we know of is Mandalorian Grogu.
Correct. Likely Ahsoka season 2. We haven't had it confirmed, but it is in the process of filming, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
So I would anticipate we'll see that released towards the end of 2026, but that's about all we know so far.
Because
we don't really have anything else lined up other than that. But I'm anticipating a lot of announcements in April, and I will be at Celebration, so I will be posting and updating as frequently as possible when it comes to updates and whatnot. And so here's hoping that we'll have lots and lots to talk about and anticipate quite soon. I'm hoping maybe to get, like you said, a couple animated projects. There's been a lot of talk about that recently, and it had been hinted at as Bad Batch was wrapping up too. So I'm definitely thinking we're gonna hear about an animated announcement soon. So I'm really, really hoping to get to be a part of that at Celebration. So we'll see, but I'm looking forward to it.
Cause hasn't for Ahsoka season 2, hasn't it been confirmed that Hayden's coming back, Obi-Wan's supposed to come back, and then young Ahsoka's supposed to come back?
I don't know if it's been confirmed. It's been rumored. I think Hayden has been talked about for quite a while, and I would say that's probably likely.
Yeah, I can see him coming back.
The other ones I've seen are just kind of rumors floating around. So I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that we'll get some more concrete announcements as we get towards the end of this year, 2025. But my guess is we won't hear anything concrete until probably next year. So gonna be a little bit of a wait, which I'm a huge Ahsoka fan and really looking forward to that. So bummed to wait a little bit more, but I'll be patient because I know it'll be worth the wait. So here's hoping that we will have some more concrete news on that soon. So we'll see.
Which we did get the new actor for Baylan Skoll.
Did have that confirmed, yes.
Which is actually a good choice. I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones. I don't know if Game of Thrones is your kind of content, but
I haven't, but I've heard a lot of really good things, and I've also heard that the person who was cast was a really close friend of Ray Stevenson. And that for me is something that I think signifies that they really took some serious time and consideration into being as respectful as possible of Ray's legacy in considering somebody who was close with him. And that I trust that if that person felt it was right to take that on, that they know that that's what Ray would have wanted. And so I have a lot of confidence in that they've made a good choice in that. And so I am happy we get to see a continuation of Baylan Skoll's character and that whole concept, because his character was so interesting and I feel like there was so much more to go with that. And rest in peace to Ray. I'm sad that we won't get to see him continue that, but I am happy we'll get to honor him in that way and see that character going forward. So I am very, very much anticipating where Ahsoka season 2 is going to go, and I'm looking forward to seeing my Ghost crew again. Is of course what my mind is always on. And I look forward to getting to see a bit more of Ezra and Jason Syndulla. I'm very excited to see kind of how his character develops. I hope we get to see some Jedi training for him. That's what I'm hoping. So I would love that.
All right, guys, that is where we will end this live podcast episode. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for watching. For everybody watching, why don't you tell them where they can follow and support you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Nerdy Girl 501 on just about every platform. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X. And I've recently gone over to Blue Sky too. So if you are where the skies are blue, you can find me there as well. And so yeah, I post Star Wars content, fandom content just about every day. So I would love if you would follow along. And I will again be going to Celebration. I'll be posting a lot of updates from that. Hopefully we'll be in some of those panels to hear some of those announcements. And so I'll be trying to keep you guys as updated as possible with those announcements, which hopefully are going to be coming pretty soon. And yeah, that's only less than 3 months away. So that's really exciting. And I look forward to sharing that with you guys.
All right, guys. And as on this side, obviously, you're going to be seeing a lot more podcast episodes being done live, also getting weekly podcast episodes. But we do have some plans for some of the live ones. I think you guys are definitely going to be excited for sure, especially ones revolving around Star Wars based content. You can also go and check out the gaming channel for anything gaming related over there. But guys, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for watching. And we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a good one.
Bye.